Happy Families podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
But you know what I do remember about my childhood? What was so important was the connections that I made and the friendships that I developed.
And now here's the stars of our show, my mum and dad.
So we had a conversation with the kids over the weekend and discovered that they have been keeping secrets from us all their lives. We were starting to talk about fun memories that we had, and next thing you know, those memories turned into confessions. What are you giggling about over there? You're just chuckling away to yourself.
Well, I got in trouble because I never checked under the covers.
So
when Dad came into the room, he would always check under the covers. But when Mum did, she just checked under the pillow.
Don't know how this came up, but the kids were basically, well, we were sharing memories, and they were like, yeah, do you remember when we would always go to bed and we'd hide a torch?
Well, it was back in the day. See, that's how they talked about it. It was like it was in the olden days before technology.
Because the kids are
and
so
the biggest concern was hiding the torch.
Yeah. And so, and what they basically said was we were always breathing a big sigh of relief when Mum came in to check on us, because she'd just sort of check under our pillow and make sure that we were going to bed, whereas Dad used to pull the blankets back to make sure there was nothing underneath the covers. And guess what? I always found the torch. I always found the screens. I always found whatever they had smuggled, the contraband that was under the blankets. And they were just stoked that you were...
Well, they think I didn't know. And that's the funny part.
Oh, you didn't know. Come on. They basically were saying that you're a negligent parent. That's what they were saying.
No, they actually were saying I was the cool parent if you were if you were listening.
I was the controlling one. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. But the funniest one was one of our daughters said, I didn't even bother doing that. If I wanted to read, I just sat on the toilet, even if I didn't need to go.
Yeah, I know. She's like, I'd hang out in the toilet for 45 minutes reading so I didn't have to go to bed and didn't have to do any chores. Not even doing anything, just reading.
I love that they read. They've always loved reading.
This is the podcast for families who know that kids are really hard work, but gee, they're awesome. I'm Justin.
And I'm Kylie.
And we're the parents of 6 daughters. I'm the founder of happyfamilies.com.au. Every Tuesday, we answer your parenting questions. You can email them to us, podcasts@happyfamilies.com.au. We can't answer them all, but what we like to do is sift through them and find ones that we think are going to be highly relevant to as many people as possible. And I think, Mrs. Happy Families, that we found one today.
Amy and Sean are parents to 3 young girls, 5, almost to 3-year-old and a 3-month-old.
Awesome. I wonder if they're going to go for 6.
I've only got 3 more to go.
Yeah, halfway there.
They moved to regional Victoria a little while ago, and although they absolutely love their regional lifestyle, there's very limited opportunities for extracurricular activities.
Yeah, and Victoria's lockdowns would have only made that worse.
So their question is, what is the research saying about children and extracurricular activities? I feel so guilty that they aren't enrolled in something like swimming or gymboree or whatever. My eldest is in kinder 3 times per week. My second is in childcare 1 day per week, and my littlest love is still with me full time.
Well, she's 3 months, so that makes sense.
But other than that, they are with me and don't engage in any activities. Is this going to affect them in any way? Should I be looking to get them involved in one activity each? This would mean a significant drive or commitment on a weekly basis. Thoughts and advice would be much appreciated.
So I love this question, and what I love is how much Amy and Sean obviously care about their kids and want to give them the best start. But I've also got to highlight, this is something that I think is really endemic in parenting in Australia at the moment, and I don't think it's healthy, and that is this constant pressure, this constant worry, am I doing enough for my kids?
Yeah.
And you can hear that there, like we're talking 5, 3 and newborn. And do we need to have them enrolled in stuff? Do we have to be doing heaps of stuff all over the place or anything at all? And so it's an important question that we dive into.
I've got lots to say about this one.
Well, why don't you go first? Because so have I.
I think just like you said, Justin, there's this desire to give our children everything that we missed out on. So I grew up in a home where we didn't have a lot of financial security, and I didn't get to do a lot of activities.
Did you do any? Like you didn't learn a musical instrument? You didn't have swimming lessons?
I played netball for a short period of time.
Right.
But outside of that, I don't remember doing anything else.
So basically you made it to adulthood as a fully functioning, capable, talented, remarkable human and never did any extracurricular activities at all?
No.
Okay. So I think that kind of answers the question right there.
But I watched as I got older, and obviously there was less financial pressures on my parents that my younger sisters got to do things that I never did.
Yes.
And you had a variety of opportunities available to you.
A plethora. You might even say.
Yes, Justin, a plethora.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, I didn't actually take advantage of them. My parents paid for piano lessons, and they literally had to drag me to my piano teacher's door, and I refused to play.
I'm curious, though, when you were put into all of these extracurricular activities, were they things that you'd asked to do, or did mum decide for you?
Boom. That's exactly it. So when I was a kid, I played soccer and cricket, but when I got older and was a teenager, I just wanted to surf, and they had me going to swimming lessons, and they had me doing music and whatever else.
Did you want to swim?
No.
I mean, you were really good at it.
Yeah. I was very, very good at swimming, but I hated it. I just wanted to be surfing with my mates. I wasn't interested in it. I had no discipline or anything like that. And so that's getting a little bit beyond our conversation, because that's talking about teenagers who are being resistant, rebellious. But I guess the main thing is you turned out wonderfully, in spite of the fact that you didn't have loads of extracurricular, in fact, any extracurricular activities in your life, other than your church involvement, which was free. That was pretty much all you did.
But you know what I do remember about my childhood that I think is just perfect for Amy and Sean? What was so important was the connections that I made and the friendships that I developed, because every afternoon after school, I would hang out with my friends.
Yeah.
And we would play in my cubby house, or we'd play in their backyard on their trampoline or their swing set, and we just played.
Yeah.
And I think that as parents, we honestly do not put enough emphasis on our children just being able to free range and play and explore their environment.
So there's a handful of questions that need to be answered here in responding to Amy and Sean. I think the first one is, when do we start?
Okay, so my answer to that is delay.
Well, yes, except I'm going to put this out there. If you've got and I guess the second question is, how many do you do once you get started? I think that if you've got the time resources and you've got the financial resources, we live in Australia. I think swimming lessons from the earliest age possible, that's an extracurricular activity, but I think that it's worth it. And we've always done that in our home, and we've really emphasised that. And I think that has been a really important thing to do.
I probably don't see it as an extracurricular, because it is actually something that's almost a mandate in our house.
Yeah, so you see that as an essential rather than, hey, let's go and do swimming lessons as an extracurricular activity.
And so as a result, our kids, from the time they were 6 months old, I was in the pool with them, and we were doing formalised lessons.
Yeah. Outside of swimming lessons, though, we need to talk about when we start, because like you said, that's kind of just a compulsory activity that everyone does so that they're safe. So we're going to come back after the break, and here's what we're going to answer for you, Amy and Sean. We're going to say how old the kids should be when they start extracurricular activities and why, what little research we have on this topic and what it can tell us, how many activities the kids should be doing, how do we choose the activities, which kind of taps in with what you were saying before about how I hated swimming and everything else I was being asked to do. What do you do when you've got lots of kids who all want to do different things and you're stretched? And what do children really, truly need? Right after the break.
It's the Happy Families Podcast.
Are screens creating tension at home? Tweens, Teens and Screens is a webinar to guide families to healthy, safe super screen solutions. Buy it today at happyfamilies.com.au/shop.
It's the Happy Families Podcast, the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now. And today we're answering Amy and Sean's dilemma on, when do we start extracurriculars? How many should we do? And is my child missing out if they don't get to do them?
Okay, question one. When do we start? Does a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, let alone the newborn, need to be doing extracurricular activities, Mrs. Happy Families?
No.
Except for swimming. In our home, except for swimming. That's mandatory. Everyone swims from the earliest possible age. But other than that, no.
As a mum of multiple children over the years, I've realised that the longer I can delay all of those structured activities, the happier my child is.
Explain that. I've got some feelings about it as well, but you explain why you would say that the kids are happier if they're doing less structured activity.
When they go to school in the morning, generally speaking for most of us, getting up in the morning and getting our kids to school is a rushed process.
It doesn't need to be, but yes.
And then they go to school and they never actually ever get to finish anything because they hurried through the program at school. I'm halfway through my drawing, but no, we've only got 40 minutes to do this and now we've got to move on to the next activity. So our children are constantly pushed through their day. And then they get home And most of the time, our kids just want to be kids. They just want to live their life the way they want to live it, whether it be building with their Lego or climbing a tree out the backyard or hanging out with their friends. But no, we've got to go and do this. And we race them out the door again. And then we race in the door so we can have dinner and have baths and then race to bed. Their day is so full and we don't give them time to just be. And so over the years, as I've looked at, the things that we've tried to do with our children, I've just noticed that the more time I can just allow them the autonomy to make choice around what they do with their afternoons, the happier everybody is.
Yeah, so long as they're not staring at screens, because that's
totally.
such a waste of an afternoon. When we look at child development, what we know is that kids are much better off free-ranging. They're better off playing in a backyard, playing with Lego, doing open-ended activities, hanging out with a friend in the park. They're much better off doing that kind of stuff than being involved in structured activities from a young age. It's true that they can develop skills and they can get really good at stuff really young, but they don't need to at that age. And the research shows that the ones who get ahead early don't necessarily fall in love with what they're doing, and they don't necessarily end up any better off in the long run. In fact, sometimes they end up worse off. So my 2 cents worth, don't get your kids involved in any kind of structured activities outside of swimming lessons, or maybe if you really need the time and space yourself, put them in one little thing to keep them going until at least the age of 8, maybe even 10. And also watch out for competitive environments. In my book, 9 Ways to a Resilient Child, I spent considerable time explaining why our kids don't need to be involved in competition and why it's bad for their resilience while they're children. And there's a whole lot of evidence that I cite as to why kids shouldn't be competing, especially below the age of around about 10, 12, maybe even as much as 14. Competition's bad for kids. So extracurricular, you don't need to worry about it in those early years, like I said, except for swimming.
Spend time developing relationships with neighbours, with school friends.
Build up the village. That's your favourite thing, right?
It totally is.
Okay, the second question that we need to answer is, how many extracurricular activities do we do?
I thought we had this really great system when we had our 3 eldest children and still had our 3 little babies. I was like, okay, if everybody just does 2, because one of them's swimming.
Yep.
So I had all of them
always
booked
been mandatory.
in swimming, and they were allowed to do one other activity. All of a sudden, I've got 6 children doing 2 things. Let's do the maths.
12 activities.
That's 12 activities. And my days were I was run off my feet trying to get them from A to B.
And then we'd also have the thing where we'd be calling people and be like, so can we book in this child at this time and have this child also at that time and that child at this time, so that we could, and the kids had to do exactly the same activities as their siblings because there was just no way of doing it all otherwise.
Well, and I couldn't possibly be in 4 places at once, let alone 6.
And then they would whinge and whine. They'd be like, but I don't want to do that.
You're all going to play netball this season.
Like, I don't like netball. Well, your sister does and she's playing it, so you're playing it as well. So how many activities do you do? I think that the correct answer for this one is it depends on how much dosh you've got and it depends on how much time you've got.
And I think it depends on your child. You're going to have, in any given family, you're going to have different personalities and different likes and interests.
And different capacity for expending energy.
Yeah. And so you're going to have one child who might want to be doing 4 different things and they're like running with it and absolutely loving it and thriving. And yet another child, one activity is more than they can cope with.
Okay, so consider your time, consider your dollars, and consider your child and their capacity. The next question that I think we need to help Amy and Sean with around this is, how do you choose what the kids are going to do once they're 8 to 10 years old and they're big enough for extracurricular activities other than swimming?
Well, I love this answer because we get to give our children an opportunity to choose.
Yeah. So we've tried getting the kids to do what we want them to do because it's what we do. The best example of that is cycling. I love cycling. Everyone knows that I love to ride my push bike. And one of our kids was like, yeah, I want to ride with you, Dad. That's going to be awesome. And so
she was really good at it.
Well, she was for 3 weeks. We went out and bought her a kid's bike. But it was
kid's kit. She had her own Lycra.
She had the Lycra, the shoes, the cleats, the helmet. And when I say we had to buy her a bike, it was a special bike that is for the velodrome. So it's fixed gear, no brakes, all that sort of stuff. And
so she couldn't use it anywhere else.
Yeah, you can only ride that bike on the velodrome. And it just wasn't actually the best idea because we spent money that we didn't have. We were poor students. We spent about $1,000 setting her up, and within 3 or 4 weeks, she had decided, this is not for me. I don't like it. I wish we hadn't done this. I don't want to do it anymore. And I tried to force her to compete as a 10 or a 12-year-old for another couple of weeks, and it was just awful. So the kids need to choose for themselves. Just because you were a football star or a netball star doesn't mean that they're going to be. Let them choose for themselves.
I know that as our children have grown and they've started to make decisions and they've, I want to do this, and then next term it's like, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to do this. And it used to frustrate me a lot because I'm like, hang on a sec, I've just had to buy you this uniform and now you're saying you don't want to do this and now you're going to play this over here, and you would say just let them have experiences. And we've been fortunate enough that it hasn't had a huge impact on us for them to be able to do that. And as I've changed my mindset and not got frustrated with the fact that they haven't stuck to something, but acknowledged that they're actually just exploring their skill sets and what feels good to them, what I've loved watching is seeing them evolve.
Yeah. And this is what the research shows. Don't get them into anything too early. Once they get to about 8 or 10, let them start to sample things and do a bit of this and a bit of that. When they get to about 12 or 14, that's when you start to say, well, how are you enjoying these things and what else can you try? So we've got daughters now who have tried multiple musical instruments, and by doing that, they've discovered what they really love. And now that they've chosen what they really love, we never tell them to practice because they know what they love and they just go and do it because they love it. And they've tried the other things and they don't love those, but they do love this and they do it. It's the same with their sport. It's the same with whatever activities they're doing. As they've had the opportunities to choose once they're old enough, and as they've had a broad sampling rather than early specialization, they're actually leaps and bounds ahead. Not that it's about competition, because it's not, but they thrive with it because they love it.
Well, they're driven themselves. They've got that internal motivation.
Exactly, that's
and
right.
One of our daughters, she tried an instrument at 13, played it for a year, hated her teacher. Her teacher just scared the living daylights out of her and just squashed any desire she had to play. She's come back, 7 years later, and she is back at lessons.
That's right. Yeah. She's like a grown-up now, but she's paying for weekly lessons so that she can play that instrument, and she's loving it.
And I just love that. I love that we gave her exposure, and at that point in time, it just didn't work for her, but she's gone back to it because it's something that really brings her lots of joy.
Okay, we need to wrap this up. So the summary is your kids definitely need to learn to swim if you're in an area where swimming is important. Other than that, though, they don't need extracurricular activities until they're at least 8. Try to keep them non-competitive. Use your wisdom in terms of how much money you spend and how much time you allocate. What they really need more than anything is time and free play and unstructured play and outside time and friends and a broad range of experiences once they're ready to get stuck into extracurricular activities so that they can work out what they really love and get stuck into that from around about the age of, 14, 15, 16.
And in relation to those broad experiences, I don't think they have to come through structured paid activities. Take your kids for bike rides as a family. Do they like extending themselves? Do they like going up hills? Go rock climbing,
Surfing.
Go mountain bike riding.
Yeah.
The more opportunities we provide for our children in a supported environment, the more likely they are going to find what they love.
Hope you enjoyed that, Amy and Sean, and that your question has been answered. If it hasn't, boy, oh boy. It was a fun conversation anyway. If you have questions for us, every Tuesday we do our best to answer your questions. Podcasts at happyfamilies.com.au. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media. Craig Bruce is our executive producer. And if you'd like more info about how to make your family happier, you can find it at happyfamilies.com.au.